After the age of 60, something profound begins to shift inside the human body, and most people never feel it happening until strength quietly slips away. You may still eat the same foods you always have, the same breakfast, the same protein portions, believing you're doing everything right, yet your muscles slowly weaken, balance becomes less stable, and simple movements demand more effort. This isn't a failure of willpower or discipline, it's biology. Scientific research shows that aging muscles become resistant to the very signals that once told them to grow and repair, a phenomenon known as anabolic resistance. In younger adults, a modest amount of protein is enough to trigger muscle protein synthesis, but after 60, that same meal may barely register at the cellular level. Your body hears the message, but it no longer responds with the same urgency. This is why protein quantity alone stops being the full story. Studies from aging research institutes reveal that older adults can eat the recommended daily intake of protein and still lose muscle mass year after year. In fact, sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle, affects up to one-third of adults over 60 and nearly half over 80, increasing the risk of falls, fractures, loss of independence, and even early mortality. Muscle is not just about strength, it is a metabolic organ that regulates blood sugar, supports immune function, and protects the brain. When muscle declines, the entire body ages faster. What most people don't realize is that the way protein is prepared can determine whether it heals or harms. High-heat cooking methods, especially frying and overcooking, fundamentally change the chemistry of food. When proteins and fats are exposed to extreme temperatures, they form compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These molecules accumulate in tissues over time and are strongly associated with inflammation, insulin resistance, arterial stiffness, and accelerated aging. Research shows that older adults already carry a higher burden of AGEs simply due to age, and adding more through cooking can amplify chronic disease risk. A fried egg may look like protein, but at the molecular level, it can send inflammatory signals that sabotage muscle recovery. Digestion also changes with age, and this quietly alters how protein is absorbed. Stomach acid production often declines after 60, sometimes worsened by common medications such as acid reducers. Lower stomach acid means proteins are not broken down as efficiently into amino acids, the building blocks muscles need. Studies show that older adults can absorb significantly less usable protein from the same meal compared to younger individuals. This means that even high-quality protein can be wasted if the digestive system is not supported. Protein that is not fully digested does not build muscle. It passes through, leaving the body undernourished despite a full plate. Timing matters more than most people have been told. Research from muscle metabolism labs shows that older muscles respond better to evenly distributed protein intake throughout the day rather than one large serving. Skipping protein at breakfast and loading it all at dinner creates long gaps where muscles receive no repair signals. Over time, this leads to net muscle loss. In aging adults, muscle tissue is constantly breaking down, and without frequent, properly prepared protein signals, rebuilding simply cannot keep up. Another overlooked factor is the role of amino acid signaling, especially leucine, a key trigger for muscle synthesis. Younger muscles are sensitive, older muscles are stubborn. They require a stronger signal to activate growth pathways like mTOR. However, this signal does not come from protein alone. Scientific evidence shows that inflammation, oxidative stress, and insulin resistance blunt muscle responsiveness. In other words, even if leucine is present, the signal can be drowned out by metabolic noise. This is why protein eaten alongside inflammatory foods or cooked in damaging ways fails to deliver its benefits. There is also a hidden connection between protein and the immune system that becomes critical after 60. Muscle tissue stores amino acids used during illness and injury. When muscle mass declines, recovery from infections, surgeries, or even minor injuries becomes slower and more dangerous. Research during recent global health crises revealed that older adults with low muscle mass had significantly worse outcomes regardless of body weight. Protein that supports muscle is not cosmetic, it is protective. The gut microbiome adds another layer to this story. Aging is associated with reduced microbial diversity, which affects how nutrients are processed. Fiber-poor, protein-heavy diets common in older adults can starve beneficial gut bacteria, reducing the production of short-chain fatty acids that lower inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity. Studies show that protein absorption and utilization improve when the gut environment is healthy. Without fiber and plant compounds, protein becomes less effective, no matter how much is consumed. This is why the idea of simply eating more protein often fails older adults. The science is clear. After 60, muscles demand not just protein, but the right form, the right preparation, the right timing, and the right metabolic environment. Gentle cooking preserves amino acids. Balanced meals reduce inflammatory interference. Digestive support ensures absorption. Variety prevents metabolic stagnation. These are not lifestyle trends. They are biological requirements written into aging physiology. Perhaps the most shocking fact is this: muscle loss is not inevitable. Long-term studies of older populations show that those who optimize protein quality and preparation maintain strength, mobility, and independence well into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. Their bodies respond because the signal is finally loud enough to be heard. Food becomes information again, telling cells to repair, rebuild, and protect. The tragedy is not aging itself, but the silence around these truths. Millions of people are told to eat the same way forever, while their biology changes beneath them. After 60, protein must work harder, smarter, and cleaner. When it does, it becomes one of the most powerful tools to slow aging from the inside out. And when it doesn't, muscle fades quietly, taking vitality with it. The difference is not years, it is knowledge. What most people never suspect is that some of the most familiar, comforting ways of eating eggs may quietly be doing the opposite of what they intend, especially after the age of 60, when the body becomes far less forgiving. Eggs are often praised as a perfect food, yet science shows that preparation and pairing can turn this nutritional ally into a source of chronic inflammation that slowly erodes health from the inside. The danger isn't dramatic or immediate. It unfolds silently, day after day, meal after meal, while symptoms appear years later as joint pain, arterial stiffness, fatigue, declining muscle strength, and rising blood sugar that seems to come out of nowhere. One of the most common habits is cooking eggs at high heat, particularly frying them until the edges crisp and brown. What looks appetizing is, at the molecular level, a chemical transformation. High temperatures cause proteins and fats to react, forming advanced glycation end products known as AGEs. These compounds have been extensively studied, and research shows they bind to specific receptors in the body that trigger inflammation and oxidative stress. Older adults already accumulate AGEs naturally due to slower metabolic clearance. When more are added through cooking, inflammation compounds. Studies have linked high dietary AGE intake to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, kidney dysfunction, insulin resistance, and accelerated aging of blood vessels. The egg itself hasn't changed, but the heat has rewritten its biological message. Another deeply ingrained habit is pairing eggs with processed meats like bacon, sausage, or ham. This combination feels traditional, even nostalgic, yet science paints a starkly different picture. Processed meats contain nitrites, oxidized fats, and compounds formed during curing and smoking that promote inflammation. When eaten together with eggs, these compounds can overwhelm the body's antioxidant defenses. Large population studies have shown that frequent consumption of processed meats is associated with higher levels of C-reactive protein, a marker of systemic inflammation, as well as increased risk of heart disease and certain cancers. What's particularly troubling for older adults is that inflammation blunts the body's ability to use nutrients effectively. Even if eggs provide protein and vitamins, inflammatory signals can cancel their benefits before they ever reach muscle or immune cells. There is also the widespread belief that eggs alone make a complete, sufficient protein meal. While eggs are nutrient-dense, eating them in isolation ignores how aging biology actually works. After 60, muscle tissue requires not only amino acids, but also insulin sensitivity, antioxidant support, and anti-inflammatory signaling to respond properly. Research shows that when protein is consumed without fiber or plant compounds, blood sugar spikes higher, insulin response weakens, and inflammatory markers rise. Over time, this metabolic stress interferes with muscle maintenance and accelerates muscle breakdown. The egg hasn't failed, the context has. Food does not act alone in the body, and isolation changes its impact. Daily repetition is another hidden risk. Eating eggs every single day, prepared the same way, may seem harmless, yet nutritional science emphasizes diversity for a reason. Repetitive dietary patterns can skew lipid profiles and reduce exposure to protective phytochemicals found in plant-based proteins. Some individuals, particularly older adults with genetic sensitivity, experience increases in LDL cholesterol when eggs dominate the diet without sufficient fiber. More importantly, dietary monotony limits the intake of compounds that counteract inflammation. Longevity studies of populations with exceptional health spans consistently show protein rotation, not fixation. The body thrives on variation, and without it, even nutritious foods can become metabolically burdensome. Gut health adds another layer of risk that is rarely discussed. Aging alters the gut microbiome, reducing diversity and resilience. When eggs are consumed without fiber-rich foods, beneficial bacteria starve while less helpful strains flourish. This imbalance increases intestinal permeability, sometimes referred to as leaky gut, allowing inflammatory molecules to enter circulation. Research has shown that gut-derived inflammation plays a significant role in chronic diseases associated with aging, including heart disease, diabetes, and neurodegeneration. Protein eaten in a compromised gut environment is less efficiently absorbed and more likely to contribute to metabolic stress rather than repair. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that these habits don't cause immediate pain or obvious warning signs. They work slowly, invisibly, through low-grade inflammation that feels like normal aging. A little more stiffness in the morning, slightly slower recovery from illness, gradual loss of balance. These are often accepted as inevitable, yet research suggests diet-driven inflammation is a major contributor. Eggs prepared gently and eaten in supportive combinations can nourish the body, but when paired with inflammatory habits, they may accelerate the very decline people are trying to prevent. Large-scale studies on aging consistently show that chronic inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging, is one of the strongest predictors of disability and early death. Food is one of the most powerful drivers of this process. The same egg can either dampen inflammation or fuel it, depending entirely on how it is cooked, combined, and repeated over time. This is not a matter of fear or restriction, it is a matter of biological truth. What makes this especially tragic is that these habits are passed down as wisdom. Fried eggs symbolize comfort. Bacon and eggs represent tradition. Eating the same breakfast daily feels disciplined. Yet the body after 60 is not the same body at 30. It requires a different conversation, a different signal, a different level of care. Science does not ask us to abandon eggs. It asks us to stop eating them in ways that quietly cancel their benefits. The real danger is not the egg on the plate, but the outdated habits surrounding it. When inflammation becomes the background noise of daily life, healing signals struggle to be heard. Muscles weaken, arteries stiffen, and energy fades, not because aging is cruel, but because the body is responding exactly as biology predicts. Once this is understood, food stops being routine and becomes intentional again. And in that shift lies the difference between decline that feels unavoidable and aging that remains strong, stable, and alive. For decades, protein has been framed as a numbers game, grams on a label, portions on a plate, yet science now reveals that after the age of 60, the real power of protein lies not in isolation, but in combination, where foods work together to unlock biological responses that single ingredients cannot trigger alone. This is where eggs and plant-based superfoods like lentils become far more than food. They become a conversation with aging muscle, immunity, and metabolism that can either fade into silence or grow louder with every bite. Research on aging consistently shows that older muscles need a stronger, clearer signal to maintain themselves, and that signal does not come from protein alone, it comes from synergy. Eggs provide high-quality amino acids, including leucine, a key trigger for muscle protein synthesis, yet studies show that in older adults, leucine's signal is often muted by inflammation, insulin resistance, and oxidative stress. This is where lentils change the equation. Lentils deliver not just protein, but fiber, polyphenols, and micronutrients that actively reduce the metabolic noise drowning out muscle-building signals. 1 cup of cooked lentils provides around 18 grams of protein, along with iron, magnesium, and folate, nutrients essential for oxygen delivery, nerve signaling, and cellular repair. When eggs and lentils are eaten together, research suggests the body responds more efficiently as plant compounds enhance insulin sensitivity and lower inflammatory markers, allowing amino acids to do their work. Muscle loss after 60 is not simply a cosmetic concern. Studies link sarcopenia to higher rates of falls, fractures, hospitalization, and loss of independence. Muscle tissue also plays a critical role in glucose regulation, acting as a reservoir that clears sugar from the bloodstream. When muscle declines, blood sugar rises, increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes and cognitive decline. Lentils are rich in slowly digestible carbohydrates and soluble fiber, which stabilize blood glucose and reduce insulin spikes. When paired with eggs, this steadier metabolic environment improves amino acid uptake into muscle cells. Science shows that muscles rebuild best when insulin is present at modest, controlled levels, not in sharp peaks followed by crashes. The immune system is another silent beneficiary of this combination. Protein supplies the raw materials for antibodies and immune cells, but chronic inflammation diverts these resources toward damage control rather than defense. Lentils contain polyphenols that have been shown to reduce inflammatory cytokines, molecules that increase with age and suppress immune efficiency. Older adults consuming diets rich in legumes consistently show lower markers of inflammation and better immune resilience. When eggs are combined with lentils, protein supports immunity instead of being consumed by inflammatory processes. Gut health may be the most underestimated factor in this story. Aging is associated with reduced microbial diversity, which directly affects nutrient absorption. Protein eaten in a low-fiber environment can alter gut bacteria in ways that increase inflammation and reduce digestive efficiency. Lentils act as prebiotics, feeding beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds proven to strengthen the gut barrier, reduce systemic inflammation, and improve muscle metabolism. Studies demonstrate that older adults with healthier gut microbiomes respond better to dietary protein and retain more lean mass. Eggs alone cannot nourish the microbiome, but paired with lentils, they become part of a system that supports digestion from the inside out. There is also a powerful effect on satiety and appetite regulation. As people age, appetite often declines, leading to insufficient protein intake. Lentils increase fullness through fiber and slow digestion, while eggs provide dense nutrition in a small volume. Together, they create meals that satisfy without overwhelming, reducing the risk of undereating protein or relying on ultra-processed foods for calories. Research shows that older adults who consume legume-based meals report better appetite control and more consistent energy levels throughout the day. Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from longevity research. Populations known for exceptional lifespan and mobility, such as those in blue zones, regularly consume legumes as a primary protein source, often combined with small amounts of animal protein. These populations experience lower rates of muscle loss, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders. Their diets are not high in protein by modern standards, but they are rich in combinations that reduce inflammation and improve nutrient efficiency. Eggs are not excluded, but they are integrated thoughtfully, supporting rather than dominating the diet. The fear that plant proteins are inferior has been challenged by modern science. While individual plant proteins may lack certain amino acids, combinations compensate effectively. Lentils paired with eggs create a complementary amino acid profile that rivals or exceeds many animal-only meals. More importantly, the presence of plant compounds changes how the body responds at a cellular level. Muscle cells become more receptive, immune cells become more resilient, metabolism becomes more flexible. This is not theory. It is supported by controlled trials showing improved muscle retention and metabolic health in older adults consuming mixed protein sources. The emotional truth behind this science is profound. Many people accept weakness, fatigue, and decline as unavoidable parts of aging. Yet evidence shows that strategic food combinations can slow or even partially reverse these trends. The plate becomes a daily opportunity to send a message of resilience. Eggs and lentils together represent more than nutrition. They represent a shift from isolated thinking to biological cooperation. What keeps this from being common knowledge is simplicity bias. It is easier to believe in single superfoods than in systems, but the human body is a system, and after 60, it demands cooperation. When eggs are eaten alone, their signal may be too quiet. When lentils are eaten alone, their protein may be incomplete. Together, they amplify each other, creating a message that aging muscles can finally hear. The most shocking fact is that this combination costs little, requires no supplements, and aligns with the deepest principles of nutritional science. It is accessible, traditional, and powerful. In a world searching for longevity pills, the answer may already be on the plate, waiting to be combined correctly. Aging does not end strength, misunderstanding does. When food is paired with intention, the body responds with gratitude, and the story of aging changes from one of loss to one of adaptation, resilience, and quiet strength that endures.